Cloud computing is really something that is misunderstood by many that don't really deal with it and don't work with it on the back end. I'm going to be explaining some terms that I think are important for you to understand, that are common knowledge among the people that work with cloud technologies. So the first big thing with cloud computing is the fact that we want to bring everything together. All of the people that are working within, whether they're on their laptop or they're on their desktop, or they're of course using mobile devices, we want to bring these set of services to them no matter where they are. The storage services, server services, the network, the media, everything has to be available to them no matter where they are located. And the reason it's called the cloud is because the general population that is using their laptops and that is using their desktops, or they're using their mobile phone, they aren't really aware of what goes on behind the scenes. What is in the cloud, and where is the data, and what is happening to the data is unknown. They just know that when they want to gain access to their music, to their movies, to their files, that whether they're using their laptop or they're using their desktop or they're using their mobile device, they're able to gain access to their music and their movies and their files from the cloud. So what does that really entail, and what does the cloud translate to? Well, so the cloud really allows you to gain access to this, and if you will, this black box, if you will. And this black box, as it points out right here, this cloud black box, really allows you to access it from really anywhere. Okay? And you want to access any kind of information. So there are a few terms that are common within the cloud that you need to be aware of. One of these terms is infrastructure as a service, which is also known as IaaS. IaaS. Infrastructure as a service. And what is infrastructure? Well, your laptop or your mobile device connects to the internet. The internet goes through some kind of firewall or some security mechanism. This right here represents the secure environment or a secure location via the internet. And your laptop or your desktop, your device, really has access to all of these resources: the storage devices, the networks, the computing horsepower collectively and management. And you, the one that is working, is unaware of what goes on. The infrastructure piece is really all of these things that are happening behind the scenes for you. From the time that you connect from your laptop to the time you save your music or movies or files, you don't really know what happened or how it happened. You also are unaware at where the data that you are presenting is being saved. In addition to infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, something that is called platform as a service, or PaaS. Platform is not referring to the network or the storage or the resources, the CPU, the processing resources. Is really referring to what is in the middle: your database, your application servers, your web servers, your middleware, maybe your application containers, and a bunch of other things. If infrastructure as a service, IaaS, I'll just label that as perhaps as I. Okay? I will just label that as I. If you really think about infrastructure as a service, infrastructure sits on the bottom. On top of that, you have platform. Infrastructure is really meant for the networking team or the IT team. Platform itself is meant for developers. Developers are the ones that are developing web applications on web servers. They are also the ones that are writing and reading to and from databases. They're also the ones that are creating applications and require application servers. So the infrastructure is used by the IT staff. Platform is used by developers. So keep that in mind. In addition to infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, you also have software as a service. Okay? You also have software as a service, which is SaaS. Got shorted out there. So if infrastructure as a service is really meant for the IT staff and platform as a service is meant for the developers, then software as a service is really meant for the end user. You, the user, is the one that is going to be using applications like Flickr or Google Apps and Google Sheets and Twitter and things that are on the web, your Amazon Web Services, your self-service applications like Salesforce, WebEx, what I'm using right here, Office Live, Acrobat Reader that is part of the Connect network, Microsoft Live Meeting. All of these things on the web are part of software as a service. And software as a service is the one that is meant to affect the end user, the people that are using this. So we have software as a service, we have platform as a service, we have infrastructure as a service. What are the options that are available from the cloud perspective? There is a public cloud and there is a private cloud. And what is the difference between the public cloud and the private cloud? You may be able to figure this out, but let's go through some of these things. First of all, the public cloud, as you might imagine, is hosted by a service provider. Public cloud is hosted at a service provider site, is hosted somewhere else. You are paying them a fee, whatever that fee is, so that they can take care of infrastructure. Okay? So that they can take care of infrastructure. So that they can take care of your platform. So that they can take care of your software. A public cloud supports multiple customers. There's a term called multi-tenancy. Multi-tenancy. And multi-tenancy really refers to the fact that the organization that is hosting the public cloud is really going to host a public cloud for more than one customer. No kidding. A business that serves to only one customer is probably not going to be in business very long. That's why the public cloud basically supports multiple customers. As an example of multi-tenancy, as I mentioned, that's one of the characteristics of a cloud. Multi-tenancy simply means that there are some shared resources that are utilized by all of the customers, and then there's some privacy features that are available only to you. If I was to explain, for example, if I was to use the term or the example of an apartment building, one apartment building has many tenants. Each tenant has and is using some shared resources of that apartment building, such as an elevator, the hallway, the electricity. All of those things, the water, the gas, all of those things are shared. However, the person that lives in that apartment building also has their own apartment under lock and key that hopefully is secure and no one else can get in other than perhaps the owner of the building. So public cloud has some shared characteristics. The network resources, the infrastructure resources, machines and such, processing horsepower and such, storage resources, the actual path that is used to communicate to and from the web, all of those things are shared. But then each customer has their own set of SaaS, or software as a service, that they are basically subscribing to. They also have, each customer may also have platform as a service, because I may request a database that I want to use, and I may request Microsoft SQL Server database. Some other customer may request my SQL Server database. Some other customer may request Oracle database. And some other customer may request some other platform, whatever the case may be. Maybe they're going to request a Microsoft Internet Information Server, or IIS. They want that web server. Someone else, maybe in the Linux world, may suggest or want Apache web server. So every customer gets to choose what kind of platform they want to work with. Do they want to work with a Linux-based open source environment? Maybe they want to work with Microsoft-based infrastructure with .NET Framework built in, and support for .NET Framework, and support for .NET-based apps, and Microsoft IIS servers, and so on. So even though a single public cloud hosts multiple customers, each customer has their own domain, if you will, their own area that they can choose how they want to fine-tune or the services that they choose to work with. That's the shared infrastructure part. Okay? And public cloud supports the connectivity over the internet. No kidding. How else effectively are you going to get around? You would have to have some kind of a private dedicated connection, which beats or which defeats the purpose of a public cloud, something that is accessible from everywhere. It is suited for information that is not private. This is kind of interesting. Now, a public cloud means that there are some shared resources. So if you live in an apartment building versus the fact that you live in a house, would you say that you're more secure in a house than you are in an apartment building? I'm not so sure about that. We can probably debate that all day long. But you can say that usually a house gives you a little bit more privacy and a lot more features, if you will. I can't really debate whether a house is more secure or an apartment building is more secure in a similar manner. You can't really say that a public cloud is definitively more secure than a private cloud. That's very, very difficult to say, because it all depends on who is doing the attacking, if you will, or who's trying to get in. Sometimes the very people that are interested in breaking apart your network are the people that work for you. But that's a whole different topic. But generally speaking, the public cloud and applications and such that are meant for the public cloud are assumed to be information that you really don't need it to be private. I doubt that government institutions such as the U.S. military would have anything on the cloud that has anything to do with any kind of secret documents and such. Now, depending on your needs, the public cloud can be a lot cheaper. And let me explain what I mean by that. As I was explaining to you earlier, there is infrastructure as a service. And infrastructure as a service really means that the servers, the data center, the network infrastructure such as cables and such, the storage equipment that would be needed to store your files, database and hardware, and switches and routers and cables. Basically everything you would need to get going with your organization's technical infrastructure can be considered to be private. It can be considered to be cheaper because you can have someone else take care of the infrastructure piece for you. Microsoft has a product called Azure, A-Z-U-R-E. Amazon has a product called Amazon Web Services, AWS. Microsoft Windows Azure and Amazon Web Services are both pay as you need to or pay as you go infrastructure and platform and SaaS as a service, if you will. If you go on Microsoft Windows Azure site or Amazon Web Services site, they will build you your IaaS. You basically say that you request or pay for one server or two servers, and then you say, okay, you want this much RAM, you want this kind of processor, you want this many networks, you want this kind of database, you want this kind of web server, and you basically, once you configure it, you're not really configuring anything. You're really ordering. It's kind of like ordering off of a menu. You're not doing any of the configuration. The beauty of public cloud and these infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, is that you can just be a small business owner and you can let others do the work for you. The backup and the security, for example, the access and the remote management can all be done so that your laptop or desktop in your home or in your small business can be your gateway into a vast universe. So, technically speaking, you, the small business person, with one or two people working for you, or maybe just yourself, and your business has nothing to do with technology. Maybe you're selling flowers. Maybe you're a cleaning service. Maybe you're plumbers. It doesn't matter. You don't want to go out and hire an entire IT staff to run your plumbing or construction business. You're a small guy. You don't want to pay out 20, 30, 40, 50 grand. You don't want to invest a large sum of money into something that, first of all, you probably don't know a lot about. And secondly, since you don't know a lot about it, you will have not as much control over it. So this way, with infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, you can just request what you want, and the access is given to you. As your organization grows, you can then go on to Windows Azure or Amazon Web Services or whatever. There are many of them. You can go on and basically say, hey, you want more servers. You want more services. Your customer base has grown. Your business has grown. And as a result, the elasticity is the inherent nature of a cloud. And the elastic part is the infrastructure and the platform. And the software as a service will grow or shrink as you need it to grow or shrink. There's another great piece about this infrastructure as a service and the cloud in general. Let's say today you live in California, and I, for example, live in California, and you are doing business in California. And then you realize a year later that, oh my God, California's business taxes are insane. I'm going to move my business to some other state. And I know many people that have done that. They've moved their businesses to other parts of the country because of tax benefits. If you had a physical location where you had your technology infrastructure, like your servers and your equipment and your hardware and your storage devices, basically the backbone of your business, if you had a physical location where that was kept, that move would be that much more complicated for you. Wouldn't you agree? You would have to basically convince your IT staff to move with you. You would have to take all of that infrastructure, move it to that new location, and then bring it back online. There may be some kind of a dead time or a unavailable time or a non-service time to your customers. If you're providing 24/7 services, that may be detrimental, right? That's going to affect your move decision, even though from many other aspects of your business, moving would be the perfect choice. But you can't do it because of all this logistical stuff that you have to deal with. When you have a cloud at your fingertips, it doesn't matter. The stuff is being handled by someone else, another entity. In this case, as an example, maybe it's Microsoft that's taking care of it or Amazon that's taking care of it. And Microsoft and Amazon are two huge organizations. They're not going to go out of business. You can be rest assured that your data is not going to be lost. You're not going to lose anything. As a matter of fact, as you're moving, you can work on your stuff on the plane, right? Or in the car, however you're moving. It won't matter. So there's a really huge benefit in using a public cloud, especially for the small business, if you will. For larger businesses, you have to kind of wonder where your strengths and weaknesses lie. For example, here we have a private cloud, which is hosted at an enterprise or a service provider site. Well, private cloud is exactly that. Private cloud is held and handled and managed at the customer's physical location. Okay? That may not be suitable for you. Maybe it is suitable for you. Do you have an IT staff? Do you have a physical location where you have all your servers and such? Are you really interested in security? Do you really not want anyone else to be able to gain access to your stuff, with the threat of gaining access to your stuff? Now, this is another thing of debate, generally speaking. It is said that private cloud is more secure than a public cloud, and that is the general consensus. However, I can tell you that that's a difficult debate. I have seen many private organizations that are not very secure, and I have seen many public cloud infrastructures that are very secure. So the question is, where does enterprise data center fall here? Okay, so enterprise data center is really over here, as you can see, inside of our private cloud. Now, one of the other things that I'm going to discuss in just a couple of minutes here is the meshing of these two. So just hold tight for just 1 minute. Private cloud supports one customer, your organization. Okay? It does not utilize shared infrastructure. Whatever I have bought from my company, my networking hardware, my storage devices, my switching and routing equipment, my machines is going to be used for my company. I am not going to lend that to anybody. So it's not going to use shared infrastructure. Okay. Connectivity is over a private network or fiber or the internet, depending on what's taking place, which means, again, from a cost perspective, it is higher cost for me. And it is suited for information that needs high level of security. Of course, if you have something and you have 100% control over it, generally speaking, it would imply that it can be more secure than someone else managing it, because there's that level of trust that goes on when someone else is managing your infrastructure, and that you can keep it secure. But I can tell you that private clouds and public clouds, and clouds in general, have come a long way, and as a result, they are quite secure. Okay, so here is another public versus private cloud. Okay, so private cloud, you can set up as a virtual private data center. You have dedicated servers. Okay, you have dedicated servers. Right? You have guaranteed resources. This is another interesting thing associated with a private cloud. Guaranteed resources means since you are controlling it, you are able to determine that, hey, I have so many customers or so many clients or so many users, I need this kind of bandwidth and this kind of cable to be able to support them. And you just go out and you buy that and you put it in. Right? In the case of a public cloud, the reason it says non-guaranteed resources is depending on what you've purchased, right? Depending on what you've purchased and depending on what you're paying for, you may not have access to everything that you need access to at all the time, but it all depends on how you've sized it. Public cloud, I can tell you right off the bat, are very successful. This is a person's opinion on whether they choose to have their information, their infrastructure as a service, their platform and their software handled by a third-party unit. It doesn't really necessarily mean that they're not equipped to handle your security. So it says, another question here is that because these entities support more than one customer, like the Navy data center, right, exactly. Because these entities support more than one customer, the guaranteed resources part may mean that the data may be just delayed getting to you. But that again means that you will need to determine how much access to data you need and what speed you need it with. And as a result, you will actually pay more if you need the service really fast and to adjust to you. With a private cloud, that would simply imply that you just adjust your technology, add more hardware, and off you go. With a public cloud, that's where the variable cost for additional capacity comes into play. Okay? But it is variable length. This is also something, see, it says insecure shared network on a public cloud. That is also the general consensus. That does not have to be true. Right? Insecure shared network really is something that, again, you can go in that topic of, are apartment buildings more or less secure than a house? Well, it depends on where the house is and how the house is put together and where the apartment building is and what kind of security is built into the apartment building. That's a topic and a discussion that can actually have no end because it's just a matter of opinion, and then it's a matter of technical fact on how the data is structured. Is internet everywhere insecure? Right? You can have that debate all the time too. Just because you're on the internet, does that make your machine more vulnerable to attacks than if you weren't? Well, I suppose technically, right? Technically, 100% safety would mean that you're not on the internet at all. That's 100% safe. Don't do it. But to say that it's completely insecure or completely secure, as this puts it right over here, says secure private front-end and back-end networks, I would say more secure or more control perhaps. The other big thing is that there is variable total cost of ownership. That's what TCO refers to. Whereas in the case of private cloud, you have a fixed cost and you know what the costs are. In the case of a public cloud, because information and data and infrastructure is so readily available, you can ramp up and buy or additional hardware or order up additional hardware and start paying exponentially more, if you will, for that hardware, for those resources, without really having the need for it. So it really depends. Really depends on your definition of what's secure and what isn't secure. So in the interest of organizations, the whole thing is, why can't I have both? Why do I have to choose between a private cloud and a public cloud? Why can't I go to a private cloud when I want information to be more secure? Right? Why can't I go to a public cloud for stuff that I would like to share with my organizational staff that is located or dispersed all over the world? That is known as a hybrid cloud, okay, where you have a private cloud where you are using your own internal environment and your internal infrastructure that you use basically when a user logs on and they want to access resources. The user simply logs onto the hybrid network, and the hybrid cloud determines, hey, the user is looking for some file or some resource that exists here inside of my private cloud, so I'm going to take them there. Or the user wants access to some document that is in the public cloud or on the public network, and I'm going to give them access to that inside of the public network, and the hybrid cloud can make that determination. You end up having the best of both worlds in this particular circumstances. So the public cloud, you have your off-site infrastructure with third-party management, like Microsoft or Amazon Web Services are the ones that are managing your infrastructure. You don't have to worry about, is my data backed up? Is the infrastructure backed up? What about power? What about paying for power? What about physical space? What if there's a fire? What if the building burns down? And am I going to lose my data? Am I going to lose the connectivity? Those large organizations have that handled. As a matter of fact, if you would like to see Amazon Web Services and the sheer amount of space that is utilized by Amazon for their server farms, I think that is on YouTube. I'm not really sure, but I think it's on YouTube. You can actually watch a video clip, or video clips, plural, of their huge farms and huge acres and acres of farms of servers. So those are large organizations, and you can be rest assured that your data will be secure, and you don't have to worry about any of that. Or you have private, where you have on-site infrastructure with your own management, right? That in and of itself can be a issue if you're a small organization. Organization that is 50 to 75 people or under 100 people, I'm not really sure where the cost benefit lies. You really have to crunch the numbers and determine, hey, if I'm paying to have a staff in-house to manage my infrastructure versus use the public cloud or private cloud combination to do it, what is my cost benefit? What are the security benefits? How about accessibility and such? And then there's the hybrid, where applications and data combination of private and public cloud, where they're located. Okay. So then there is this public versus private cloud versus hybrid, specifically in cloud storage infrastructure for cloud storage purposes. Okay. So there's public cloud storage, private cloud storage, and then there is hybrid cloud storage. So scalability from public cloud storage and hybrid storage, scalability means that I can scale from 100 terabytes of data to 200 or 500 terabytes of data. In the case of cloud, very fast, public and hybrid. In the case of private cloud, I have to manipulate things too much internally. Okay. Security, for example, is another topic here, as you can see. And in the public cloud is a security is pretty good, but depends on the security measures of the service provider. Yes, Amazon is a very good service provider. Private cloud, well, let's just say the same thing. Security is good, but it's going to depend on who's doing it. I've been at organizations where they're not very secure at all. Hybrid cloud can be very secure, but it's because it's taking measures to use the best of both worlds. Okay. Performance in a public cloud can be not very great. Private cloud can be very good because nobody's sharing anything. And hybrid cloud can be very good as well, depending on you have the right people pointing at the right cloud, private or public, to gain access to the correct amount of resources. Reliability in private cloud, it says, is very high because the equipment is on premises. I'm not really sure about that either. That is also something that can be up for debate very easily. I know some people and some organizations that are not very privy to how backups and restores work. And if everything is going fine and working fine, unless there's a catastrophe, like, an earthquake or like a disaster of some kind or a huge power outage, floods, a whole bunch of things happen, right? Depending on where you are in the country or the world, you may have, just because you have all the equipment on premises, it can also mean that you have a lot to take care of that is unlikely to happen with an organization that is handling your stuff. So in the public storage, reliability is medium to high for hybrid, and medium is, as it says, for public. Cost for public cloud is very good because you use the pay-as-you-go model. You don't have to shell out tens of thousands of hundreds or hundreds of thousands on the same exact day. You can choose to shell out money as you need to. Maybe you only need one server and one or two services today. So you use what you want. As your organization grows, you pay more as you need to. In a private cloud, the cost is good, but since you have a lot of the resources on cost, you have to worry about data center space and electricity and cooling in addition to staff. That's not something that's mentioned here. Staff is a pretty big part of the cost, isn't it? That's not something you have to worry about if you're only dealing with a public cloud. And hybrid, the cost is improved because you're taking advantage of the best of both worlds. That's really why in a hybrid cloud, the cost is improved. Okay? So there's another interesting thing here. Okay? This whole economics, if you will, cloud computing economics. There is a total cost of ownership per server, and then the blue line represents public cloud, and the green line represents a private cloud. So if you really take a look here, at this is the number of servers. If you have 10,000 servers, right? Look at this. Your cost is going to be under $2,000 per server, maybe even $1,000 per server. So for 10,000 servers, how much is that? Well, you're saving quite a bit of money. So this is kind of equating how much it costs you. And there's that difference there of $2,000 per server, or that gap. If you have fewer servers, the gap won't be as big. Right? The more servers you add to the equation, the more per server cost is going to go down, both for private and for public, but there's still this gap here, even at this stage, of about $1,000 or so per server. So cloud computing economics, and that is actually many, many, many factors. So I wanted to highlight information as a service, which is really, or infrastructure as a service, which is really meant for the back-end services or the IT staff. Then there's platform as a service, which is meant for developers. Then there is software as a service, which is really meant for the end user. Okay? Infrastructure meant for IT, platform that is meant for developers, software as a service that is meant for the end user. And there's also network as a service as well. There's networking as a service as well that is gaining momentum quite a bit. But that is generally the crux, or the nuts and bolts, if you will, of cloud and cloud computing. These three services that are being presented, and the economics that go behind it.